Hey guys, Dylan from Noblerecordstore here, coming at you with another video. This is first video 2019. It's about 3 a.m. Here on the East Coast, and we just had some friends over for a while, hanging out and waiting for the ball to drop. And after they left, I was like, you know what? I've been wanting to do this video for some reason. Felt like I wanted to do it right now, so I've been wanting to do this for a few months. I've been just thinking about it, and so I thought I would do it tonight. So this is the records that changed my mind. So that being said, you know, I think a lot of us in our musical taste, we have our mind made up of what we like. And then occasionally an album will come along that will just kind of just change the trajectory of our taste. So these are albums that kind of surprised me, that took me by surprise when I found them, and just absolutely changed my mind of what I thought of music. So early on, obviously, I think the way most of us are is, you know, my musical choices were very, and I'm talking when I was 12, 13 years old, very, all the hits, you know, top 40 rock and roll, stuff like that. So Boston, Leonard Skinner, Led Zeppelin, stuff like that was just top 40 type stuff. And so when I was, and I shared this in my first ever YouTube video. It's a cool story. A lot of y'all might not have heard of that, so I share it again. But there was a record shop in Kannapolis that used to, and they're actually still there. It's a pretty cool little shop. But they used to throw away all the records that the owner didn't think he could sell. So when we were in the area, my mom would pull by the dumpster and let me jump out and dig through the dumpster. So I was like 14 at the time, and she pulled up one night, and I think they had closed or whatever, and I dove in the dumpster, started diving, looking through, and this one I found, it wasn't in a sleeve or anything. It's this record right here, and for some reason, it's on Douglas Records. It's let's see, it's the Muddy Waters Blues Band, Luther, Georgia, Snake Boy Johnson. I think this is 68 or 69 on Douglas Records. So if you see that label, for some reason I saw that Douglas, and I had heard of Muddy Waters before. I had never listened to him, didn't know what he sounded like. And actually looking at this, it's kind of funny. It's not in as bad a shape as you would think, being just in a dumpster with no sleeve or anything. But I eventually found the sleeve and put it in there. But I took it home, listened to it, and it's an awesome blues record. I mean, and it's actually not a common blues record, but it was my introduction to blues. I'd never heard blues like that before. But it's so soulful and emotive and just a powerful blues record. I mean, these guys sounded like they were crying, you know, when they were playing this. I mean, it was real blues. And so for years and years and years, I listened to that record over and over again. I wore it out. I loved it. And like, just when I heard it, it just awoke something inside me. I loved it. And I wanted more blues, and I knew that it was something. It's one of those things like, where has this been my whole life? You know, I love this. So a few years ago, I found one. I didn't even know what the cover looked like. So, but I found one with the cover. This is a promo copy. This is it's the Muddy Waters Blues Band, Luther, Georgia, Snake Boy Johnson. It's a promo copy on Douglas. But yeah, this isn't even like a really super expensive record to be an old blues record, but it's just killer. I absolutely love it. Like I said, so that was one that kind of changed my mind. I thought I had my tastes formulated as a sophisticated 14-year-old. So, and then that kind of came along and just like threw a total wrench in it and changed everything I thought about music. So, you know, I think that when it comes down to musical taste, a lot of people, some people are like really driven by technical music and how technical it is, and some people are driven by the emotional side, and like how much it pulls on your emotions. And for me, if a song or a album or something stirs your emotion, it's a good album. I like it. So anyway, so that's kind of what it did for me. It kind of stirred my emotions. So moving along, shortly after that, I'd heard a lot of talk about Bob Marley. You know, at the time, everybody was wearing Bob Marley shirts and heard about him all over the place. Didn't know what he sounded like. And I went to Walmart one night and bought a Bob Marley CD. So took the Bob Marley home CD home and put it in my CD player at home, and I was like, what the heck is this? I thought Bob Marley was rock and roll. This ain't rock and roll. I was like, what is this music? This is Jamaican music. I remember thinking, what's this? This is like island music or something. And I skipped through, listened to a couple of the tracks, and I was like, I hate this. Put it back in the CD case, set it aside, whatever. Didn't think much more about it. A few months later, had gone to the beach. We went to Florida with my cousins. We did every year. I was like, I'll bring that along. Maybe it'll kind of, it's kind of that vibe, going to the beach, hanging out. Brought it along, had my Discman or whatever CD player, and I listened to it the whole way down there. And man, I fell in love with it. I had never listened to reggae before. I never listened to anything like that, and it was just so out of the realm of what I would listen to. But I really liked it. And that whole trip, I listened to it. And it was this album, Natural Mystic. I'll take it out of the jacket for you to see. Now this is extremely rare on vinyl. I looked for years for this record, and even online, it's very hard to find. And because it was this CD, and that CD, I actually lost it. I have no idea what happened to it. I lost it when I was about 16, 17 maybe, and so I had not heard the album since then, like in this order. It's a compilation, but it's a compilation of kind of earlier stuff. But man, that whole trip, like every time I hear this album, it just brings back just memories from that trip. When you hear an album with the songs in a certain order, it just triggers memories for some reason. For me, it does, anyways. But this is on Tough Gong. This is a Jamaican press, and literally, these are so impossible to find. It's crazy. And I was up here in Charlotte one day a few years ago. I had been looking for this album on vinyl for, 10 years. And I was up here in Charlotte, and some hipsters were selling some records, and they had posted an ad on Craigslist or something, and I met them and got their records, and that was in there. I couldn't believe it. What are the odds of that being in there? But it was. So moving along, I at that point really liked classic rock and stuff like that. Jack Johnson was really popular, and I was playing guitar and stuff, and I was hearing Jack Johnson. I kind of liked Jack Johnson's sound. It was when he was really just first hitting the scene, and all my friends really liked him and stuff. And I heard this album, and this is somebody who has ties with Jack Johnson, but this is Ben Harper and the Innocent Criminals, Live from Mars. This is really kind of rare now too. I don't know if they didn't print a lot of these, or they're out of print or whatever, but these are kind of hard to find. As soon as I ever saw one on vinyl, I picked it up because it was so influential to me. But songs like I really liked Power of the Gospel, Roses for My Friends, Waiting on an Angel, Pleasure and Pain, Drugs Don't Work, Not Fire, Not Ice. So I don't know, man. It just has so many great songs that he wrote, and again, this is more emotional, powerful music than Jack Johnson was to me. This was real good songwriting and real funky, powerful, hard-hitting music that really backed it up. Ben Harper is one of my favorite artists out there, and it's been a while since I heard this, but I put it on the other day, and it just took me back to that time. I first heard that record, and it just really, I was like, man, I've really got to start writing music. Like it put that idea in my head that I want to do this. And so this record, and another one that went hand in hand with this, I don't have them on vinyl, and I probably never will unless they reissue it, but it's John Butler Trio, Sunrise Over Sea, and it came out around the same time, I think. And man, the first time I heard that, it almost brought tears to my eyes. It blew my mind. I loved it. But it was just so different than what I was used to, and it just kind of stirred me in a different way, made me really think about wanting to write my own songs. So that one was incredible for me. I mean, I had that on CD, and it was probably the only CD in my car for a long time, and I just listened to it over and over again. So fast forwarding, that was maybe when I was like 16 or 17. Fast forwarding to, so I was in my early 20s, and I had bought a record collection, my first big record collection that I bought, and I had found this record. This is Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, From Her to Eternity. This is, it's just if you your average listener listening to this album is going to be crazy. This is kind of just a crazy out there album, and I saw it and I was like, man, that looks pretty cool. I'm gonna listen to that. Put it on the turntable, and immediately thought, this is super weird. I don't think I like this, but I don't want to turn it off. It was a really weird feeling. I've never had this feeling for a record before, that I didn't like it, but I couldn't stop it. I loved it. I don't know. I can't explain it, but it was something that just kind of, I was like, I'm gonna let it play through, and it was out there. It was crazy, but like I said, it was something that kind of took me by surprise. I really liked it, and just couldn't put it down, and that kind of opened me up to Nick Cave's repertoire of music that he did. Really like Nick Cave. I really respect him as a songwriter. His music's out there. Like, for your average listener, it's not going to be something you, if you're not listening to any kind of psych or anything that kind of stretches your mind a little bit, it might not be something that you like. It's outside the realm of normal. But Nick Cave has put out, gosh, I don't even know how many albums. I'm going to guess maybe 20 or 25 between all of his projects, The Birthday Party and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and Grinderman and all that stuff. He's like just extremely disciplined songwriter. He just cranks out music and hits, and not hits, but albums. So moving along, shortly after that, I'd always heard people talk about how great Frank Zappa was, and I didn't like Frank Zappa. I didn't have a palate for it. I couldn't get into it. Tried, could not get into Frank Zappa. And somebody told me, he's like, if you ever come across some of Zappa's work that's more, it's easier to swallow, maybe Hot Rats or Chungas Revenge or something like that. And it kind of stuck with me. I was like, if I ever find that stuff, I'm definitely going to give it a shot. And so I bought this huge record collection from a guy. This was probably when I was 25, 26, something like that. And this guy passed away, and there was a guy in charge of selling off his estate, so I was able to buy all of his records, and he had a ton of Frank Zappa in there. And sure enough, Chungas Revenge, Hot Rats actually wasn't in there, but Chungas Revenge was, and I put this album on, and it, I'd never realized how incredible of a guitar player Zappa was. And so I just was fascinated by it, and all the Zappa I had heard had been like a little bit later stuff, like maybe Zululurs and later, but I just didn't, I couldn't hear that. I just didn't like it. And when I heard this, it opened me up to listen to the earlier stuff, and then also to listen to the later stuff, and to kind of understand him as a songwriter and as a composer and all stuff. Frank Zappa, in my opinion, is one of the most brilliant minds of music ever. He's just incredible. The stuff that he wrote was so weird, but also so intricate. And he was a composer, but he was also very, I don't know, he was well-rounded, but in kind of a weird way. But Zappa is one of my all-time favorites. incredible individual and songwriter. So after that, I just kind of just personally went through a really hard time. I took a job that I really hated, and it was a couple years there, and just some life circumstances, hard times, no money, just, you know, a lot of y'all might have been through that, to where it's just like you can't do nothing right, failure after failure. It's a hard time, and I just I was listening to a lot of, I won't tell you what kind of music it was because I don't want to put a bad light on it, because I know a lot of people like it, but just music that was not characteristic of me and my attitude normally. So I just listened to music for a couple years that was just it was not it. I don't like it now because it reminds me of that time, but just music that was uncharacteristically dark for me as a person. And not to say that I'd never get into it again, but at that point in my life, it's consumed me. I stopped listening to all the music that I loved and started listening to like a lot of darker music, and just kind of I don't know. I knew I was in a hole, and I knew that I was having a hard time and just trying to get out of it. And towards the end of that period, I had bought this book called 1001 Albums to Hear Before You Die. And it's a great book. I really recommend that to anybody. I think you can get like a paperback copy for under $10 used on eBay or Amazon or whatever. Really great book. There's been like 20 different editions of it. But anyways, I had bought this book, and it's all these different albums that you got to hear before you die. And it starts with like Sinatra or Elvis, and goes all the way up to this White Stripes, and I'm up to now. So so I started just like going through that book, and I had printed out a list of all the albums, and it turned me on to a lot of albums that I had never listened to before. And I had listened to Velvet Underground before, and I just didn't like it. I didn't care for it. And I had given it a couple shots. I knew everyone liked it, and I just couldn't like it. It was just too weird. And I had, for some reason, seen this in there: Velvet Underground, White Light, White Heat, and the name of the album. This is second pressing. The name of the album struck me. White Light, White Heat was just a cool. I just like that. It just, I don't know, made me want to listen to it. So I listened to it, and I had listened to Velvet Underground and Nico. For some reason, it just didn't sit with me. And White Light, White Heat, I listened to it, and the thing that got me on White Light, White Heat was The Gift. So, you know, The Gift is the second track on the first side, and it's a story that this guy's telling about. I won't tell you what it's about. I'll let you listen to it on your own. I don't want to spoil it, but it's a hilarious story and also tragic. But I would strongly recommend you listen to it. But I love stories. I love storytelling. And I remember sitting there, and I'll sit there at my computer at work, and I could listen to music all day, which was great. And I would listen to it, and I was just sitting there dying laughing. Just thought it was so funny. But it was also tragic, like I said. But it's called The Gift. It's really funny. It's about a guy that mails himself in the mail. It's really funny. I would strongly recommend you listen to it if you haven't heard it. Anyways, so that kind of made me think, they might be all right. And I listened to the album several times, really, really liked it, and then ended up getting into Velvet Underground stuff too. And from that, I ended up getting into Psych, and you know how I am now, just like really super deep into it. So that, but that album was the gateway for me. Like Zappa kind of stretched me a little bit to be able to have a palate for it, I guess. And then, like, after hearing it at that season of my life, it kind of pulled me out of that dark hole that I was in, that just kind of with my musical taste and all that stuff. And eventually, you know, I was able to kind of get to a better place and quit that job, which was the best thing ever for me. Quitting that job, and just a lot of things got better shortly after that. But that was the one album that kind of got me into Psych. Opened my eyes up to the world of like more obscure music, but really, really good music So I won't go any further with that, but these I've got 3 for the next one. So I spoke about this in a video not too long ago, but when I was out west in August, me and my family drove out west, and I had like burned a playlist onto a CD, and I didn't know any of the songs beforehand. And so we would be driving down the road listening to the CD, and I had never heard most of them. And it was kind of singer-songwriter-y type songs that me and my wife would both enjoy. And this artist called Sleeping at Last was on there, and this is his album. It's called Atlas Year One. It's a 3 LP box set. A really awesome album, but there's one song on there called Saturn, and it's his most popular song. That was on there, and I remember driving down the road and listening to it, and like driving through the night, because we drove through the night. We drove like 8,000 miles in 3 weeks. It was crazy. But just kind of driving through the night and listening to it, it just kind of just really opened my mind up. Like it really inspired me like never before. It just like incredible record. Listen to that. If you're into singer-songwriter stuff, it's kind of more somatic in the way, like, he writes a lot of movie scores and stuff, but also has really good lyrics with the songs, really great stuff. And so kind of that album made me really consider, I'd written a lot of songs in the past, but kind of made me think maybe I'm not done writing songs. Maybe there's more songs left inside me, that I'm supposed to write. So that song, from listening to that album, I just immediately started writing songs again, because I hadn't written songs in a while. It's kind of something I thought I was done with, and so kind of right after we got back, I started listening to this record. This is Townes Van Zant's self-titled record. This is his 3rd record actually, but it's self-titled. This album is him, kind of some songs from his first album and some new songs from him, but it's really stripped down acoustic. And I've talked about Townes Van Zant in a number of other videos, but this album, when I heard it, is just one that just like completely like shook me. I was like, I cannot believe how incredible this is. He's such a great songwriter. Sorry, I just ate pizza. But man, this album, I could not stop listening to it. It's all I'll listen to for like a month. I'm not joking. That doesn't happen. I like diversity, but this album, just couldn't put it down. It's got songs like Waiting Around to Die, Colorado Girl, Lungs, I'll Be Here in the Morning. Those songs are just incredible, but just the intricacy of his songwriting, and also just he had really cool, unique finger picking style. And Townes Van Zant's the type of artist that it's like, it almost just seems completely effortless the way he plays and writes songs, and that one really kind of changed my mindset for writing songs. And then to go along with that, I'd heard this album before, but it didn't hit me the same way. But this is Guy Clark's Old Number One. This is one I had heard in the past, and it didn't do much for me. But after hearing Townes Van Zant, like hearing this, I was just like, man, how did I not love this when first time I heard it? But it's another one that's really kind of inspired me. Those last 3, this is just really great songwriting on it too. A lot, like, very acoustic driven, most of the songs. Really love that. But those last 2 kind of put the idea in my head of kind of what I wanted my songs to sound like when I wrote songs, and then the Sleeping at Last just kind of made me, kind of opened me back up to that. So those are some albums that just kind of changed my mind, changed my trajectory in life as I was collecting music and as I was listening to music. I'm always listening to something new, always listening to things, always discovering things that are surprising me, but those are the ones that really surprised me in a big way. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys have anybody wants to do a response to this, I would love to hear some albums that kind of changed the way that you think about music and the way that you've listened to music and made you seek out new things. I had like 20 other albums I wanted to show, but I knew it would last too long because each album has such a rich, deep history for me. So hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys have a good year. Really excited about 2019 and kind of what's in store for that. So thank y'all so much. I'll see you soon.